y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Danielle and I'm the owner of Damn Fancy Creations and Damn Fancy Supply Co. If y'all are in my groups, y'all may have noticed a few changes going on over at the Drunk Flamingo, which is now Damn Fancy Supply Co. The past few months, I've really just kind of lost my spark for creating tumblers, but that doesn't mean that I have stopped creating in general. I love to create different things, so I decided to start offering products and tutorials on other crafts that I love creating. One thing I've always enjoyed is working with polymer clay and making my own earrings. I have not made my own earrings in a few years, but I did recently get a 3D printer and decided to try designing and printing my own earring cut files. And so far, I am loving it. These little fairy frogs were my first earring cutters that I made, and I love them so much. If y'all have wanted to learn how to create your own polymer clay earrings, this is a great starting point. I am going to cover all of the basics as well as any tips and tricks I've learned throughout the years. If y'all are ready to create your own little froggies, let's get started. Alright y'all, so here is the basic things that we're going to need at first. Obviously you're going to need clay. I'm going to use some olive clay, and I did mix some of this green in there, but I don't really think it made a difference. So basically I'm using the Craft Smart olive green. I have tested several different types of clay over the years. I feel like Craft Smart is very comparable to Sculpey Primo, but is a little bit softer. And here are my little clay cutters. I do have a left and right facing froggy. These are available on my website, which is damnfancysupplyco.com. So what you're going to do first is condition your clay, which is basically where we're just going to mush that clay up, get it good and soft. If this is hard on your hands, you can use a pasta roller, which I have sitting beside me. Mine is really, really old. I really need to invest in a new one. The handle is broken off of it. It has definitely been loved. But once you get your clay soft enough to feed through the pasta machine, go ahead and do that. That will also condition your clay. And while we're conditioning, I'm going to talk about clay types. I do not recommend Sculpey 3, even though it is a really soft clay and easy to work with. After you bake it, it is very brittle. So for smaller pieces like earrings, you do not want to use a brittle clay. Sculpey Primo is good. I have not tried Sculpey Souffle, but I've heard that that is also good. And then there's a few other brands out there. I do prefer the Craft Smart. I've used it over the years and have really liked the outcome. So you're going to roll your clay out. You don't want it too thick and you don't want it too thin, especially if you're using an imprint cutter. I typically size my cutters between 1.5 and 2 millimeters. So that means that your clay needs to be a little bit thicker than that so you get a good imprint. So I am rolling my clay between 2 sheets of paper after I get it to the thickness I want. That way it'll help get rid of some of those lines if you use a pasta roller. And if you're unsure of your pasta roller machine, like how thick it makes your clay, you can always get a thickness reader off of Amazon. I do have one. I think it was maybe $9 or so. So I'm just going to trim my clay a little bit. My ceramic blocks were dirty, so I just baked mine in a ceramic baking dish. I prefer to use these ceramic clay tiles that you can get at Home Depot. You can just buy 1 or 2 and pretty much any size that you want, which y'all will see in future videos. And then we have our cornstarch. This is going to help your clay cutters from sticking to the clay. You can use a fluffy brush if you need to get some parts that are really far in there. And to get good clean lines, we're going to double press. So I press a little bit to get the outline, and the second press, I'm going to press all the way down. And you can shimmy your cutter just a little bit if you want to help break those lines up or get it unstuck from the bottom. But there is our little imprint. And then of course the rest of my video is out of focus. It is not your eyes. I just did not think it was going to be out of focus. But anyway, it's the same process. So we're dipping our clay cutter into a little bit of cornstarch, tapping it off so we don't have huge clumps of cornstarch in there. And then we're pressing a little bit into the clay, dipping in cornstarch again, and then pressing all the way down. This way you will get a clean line and minimal cleanup. And after you get your clay cut out, we're going to take these little pieces straight to the oven. Look at your clay package before you put it in the oven. Some clays do bake at different temperatures. My package of Craft Smart says 275 for 20 minutes. I always bake my clay for longer than that. I will bake my pieces for about an hour. And I set my oven to 250 because I know it runs hot. So I do 250 for an hour, and I've never had issues with my clay being brittle or underbaked or overbaked. And I bake it for an hour because the more time that the polymer clay is in the oven, the longer those plastic polymers have a chance to form a bond and really strengthen in the oven. Now you can make holes in your earrings before you put them in the oven, but I wasn't really sure where I wanted to put my hardware, so I'm just doing it after. So I'm getting one of my smallest drill bits and I'm putting it, just barely turning it to get that hole. And this is where I put my hole for all of my little fairy frogs. Next time, I'll just make a little hole with a needle, or you can use a small clay cutter, which is usually what I use, before they go into the oven, so I don't have to do this step afterwards. So I'm going to go in with some acetone and a little Q-tip. Y'all can see I've already been using this one. But this really helps clean up any of the little residue that may be on the edges. And it can help smooth out parts on your earrings, fingerprints, any little indentions. You can just rub some acetone. Be careful because it does kind of, I don't know, I would say melt the clay a little bit if you work with it too much. And if you have any white residue from the cornstarch, the acetone will also help get that cornstarch or the white residue off of your earrings. We're just poking the little piece of clay out from that hole. And there's what our little froggy looks like. Isn't he so cute? I was loving how these turned out. So the next step is to paint our little frogs. So I am using model paint colors. These are what people use to paint little model figurines, and they work great for polymer clay because they're pretty high scratch resistant. And I don't typically use a brush when I paint my pieces. I actually use the smallest dotting tool that I can find. So this is one of my smallest little dotting tools, and we're just going and coloring in the black part of our little froggy's wings and his little eye. And you guys can obviously choose whichever color you want to do. You do not have to copy the colors that I am using. And some other reasons why I really like the model paint is because it's different from acrylic. You're not going to get a thick paint with brush strokes. This is very pigmented. It only takes a little bit of this paint to cover the color. Y'all can obviously see that I have green clay and that black is coloring really well, but you will even see when I get the lighter color paints that it just takes a small amount to cover the clay. You're not going to need to do a second coat. The model paint is also highly scratch resistant. So if your earrings, bump up against something in your jewelry cabinet, or if you throw them in your earring case if you're traveling, chances are they're not going to scuff up really easily. Whereas acrylic paint can peel off or chip a little bit more easily. So I'm just trying to get into all these little bitty cracks, and then I decided that I did not want to do that. But if you ever get paint on something and need to clean it up, you can use a Q-tip and some acetone. And I was going to clean this up, and then I just decided to let it dry, and I was just going to cover it with the other colors. So here is the color I'm using for my mushroom. This is Light Flush. I wanted to use a color that had a little bit of a brown tint to it because mushrooms aren't pure white. And I also just felt like this color went better with the other colors on my earrings. And you can get model paint at pretty much any craft store, but I did get mine off of Amazon. They have several kits that you can purchase. I will link those down below. And like I said, a little goes a long way. So I think some of the kits are between $20 and $40 for all of the colors. However, you just use such a small amount that it will last you forever. It will last you a really, really long time. And this is me painting these in real time. I wanted to show you guys a couple of real time painting just so you can get an idea of how fast I go. And then I will speed up some other colors. So I'm just putting the tip of that dotting tool on that raised clay section, and it kind of just flows into place. And I know I probably have several blingers watching these tutorials. And when I started burning hats, I told y'all that burning hats was very similar to rhinestoning. And I also feel like painting the clay pieces is very similar to rhinestoning. I think it's just because you're so focused and it's just like the little details. And that is something that I love. I love to just sit up in my office and just really focus on what I'm doing and just kind of go with wherever my creativity takes me. So once we're done with our little mushroom stem, we are going to move on to another part of our little froggy. So we're going to get the red paint out. This is a matte red. When I purchased my colors, I chose most of them matte. That's just my preference. I just prefer matte colors. Even with spray paint, I prefer matte colors. So this is just a red. It's a little bit darker in person than it is on the screen. And we're just going to paint the tops of our mushroom with this color. And the puppies are after something. So now we're going to do our other little mushroom. So I'm just barely kind of gliding over the top of that clay, and that paint just falls into place. I love it so much. And after we get the mushroom tops done, we're going to go and add some color to the wings. And I decided to do several different colors for the wings. This is it says clear orange. I'm not really sure what the clear orange means. Maybe it's a little transparent. I don't know. This is a matte blue. I think I had a matte purple. I just kind of picked all the different colors that I thought would be pretty. So I will show you guys that we're just going to put this orange right over where I got that black on the wing, and it covers it with one coat. Super easy. How cute is he, y'all? I love him. So this is the only place where I'm putting the color. We're just doing those 3 little raised spots. And I will say sometimes the tip of the little circle that's supposed to be on the tip of that wing, I just kind of rip it out too fast, I think. Sometimes the little raised part is there, sometimes it's not. It honestly is not going to make that big of a difference if the circle does not come out of the cutter as well. I just added a little bit of that orange to whatever clay was there. I think that this was the one where I did not have a little raised piece. Sometimes you don't catch these things until it's too late. So now we're going to go in with our other color because I couldn't decide which ones I liked best. I really did like this dark blue. I think that orange may still be my favorite. I also like the pink ones. And then of course I touched a wet frog. Now we're going to finish up our last wing. And then if you want to add some details to your pieces, like little dots or shading or something like that, then you can do that as well. So I am going in and adding some little white dots to my red tops of my mushrooms, but I think that some of this red paint was a little too wet. I should have let it dry just a little bit longer because the white kind of seeped into it, and I did go back and redo them. And then I'm going to get some green and we're going to go and add a little bit of details to the little frogs themselves. So we're just going to put some little dots on them like you would see on real frogs. So I just picked a green shade that was a little bit different than the clay that we used for the frog. So we're going to do the same thing that we did with the mushrooms. I'm just going to go in and add a couple little dots right on our frogs. You can kind of see them in the video. They are definitely more noticeable in person. So it's just another cute little detail to add. And once we get done with detailing our little frog, then we're going to go add some white spots to the wings. And I feel like all of these little details are kind of what set your pieces apart. So it's not just you're cutting a piece of clay out and putting hardware on it. I definitely think that going back and painting them, adding the details, in a way it puts your own flair on them and kind of your vision for what you saw for the cutter. So I'm just adding really tiny white spots right down the wing. And remember to let your paint dry before you add a color on top, especially if you're adding a lighter color like white on top of a darker color. So I was just kind of looking at them to decide if I was happy with them, which I was. So next, I'm just going to decorate the rest of my earrings. I'm just going to speed this up. I think this is 5 times the speed. Don't we all wish that we could work this fast? But I wanted to let this play just in case you guys wanted to see what different colors looked like. You can always slow this section down and watch it at normal speed if you want to, just if you need like a refresher or if you're somebody that likes to see things multiple times. So y'all can just enjoy this video, listen to the wind and the birds chirping out here. It is definitely a hot day in Georgia. And if y'all are new to my channel, I do voice all of my videos out on my screened-in porch. So most of the time you will hear my train go by, birds chirping. Some videos we have had hawks because we have 2 hawks that live in the woods right behind us. But it's just so relaxing to me out on my porch. So I like to spend as much time as I can out here. So this is one of my favorite frogs. I just love this blue. It's almost like a cornflower blue. And if y'all are still watching this part, let me know in the comments what your favorite color is. I have two different colored blues, a purple. I did an orange, and I have a pink and maybe a red. I can't remember. But see, I also love this pink too. It's so cute. And I will go ahead and tell you guys that after you paint these earrings, you should be good, because like I said, we're using the model paint, which has a pretty high scratch resistance to it. But if you would like to seal it with UV resin or a top coat of some sort, then you can do that as well. I always suggest checking to make sure your top coat is compatible with polymer clay. Do not use a spray paint on your polymer clay. It will cause a sticky mess. So any type of spray paint clear sealers are out of the question. Do not use them. So here are what my finished little froggies look like. I was so happy with how they turned out. I just love them so much. So once you get done painting your frogs, put your top coat on and they have dried completely, we're going to add our hardware. So I have regular little hooks and I have some little ball studs. And I selected the black hardware. I tried gold and I did not like it with the frogs. I liked the black because the ring is not as noticeable against the black wing of our frog. The gold definitely stood out, and that is not what I wanted. I definitely wanted the frogs to be the focus and not the hardware. So I already put the hardware on most of these frogs. I left two out so I could show you how I do the hooks and the little stud pieces. So for the hooks, we're going to use two different size jump rings and then the hooks. So we're using a little bit of a bigger one and then a smaller one. I apologize, I don't know what size jump rings they are. They were just in a kit that I have. And yes, I know my pliers are awfully dirty, which just shows that I use them a lot. So we're just going to open our ring, slide it through that little hole that we made with our drill. And while it's still open, we're going to get the smaller ring and just pop it on there. And then we're just going to carefully close the jump ring back. It was a little tricky because you're kind of trying to close it between the wings, but we made it happen. And I do have another pair of pliers, I just could not find them at this moment. So now our little frog has those two jump rings on. And to attach our hook, we're just going to open the base of our hook, just like that. And we're going to put our little jump ring through there. And make sure that you have your hook facing the correct way. When you put your earrings on, you don't want the frogs to be facing towards your neck and not out so other people can see. And then we're just going to close that back up. So here is what that little guy looks like. So I'm going to speed up the other one real quick. You guys can slow it down if you would like to. but it is the same process as the last earring. Put the larger hook in first and then the smaller one on that jump ring, and then we're going to open up the hook and slide it on the small jump ring and close it back up, and voila. So those are our two little hook froggies. So now we're going to do the stud version. So for the stud, we're just going to use one large jump ring. This one was a larger size than even the larger one on the hook frogs. And I chose the sizes based on how they lined up with the wings. I didn't want something super small. And I wanted that ball to be out of the wings, so it wasn't, you know, rubbing up against the wings or anything like that. So we're just going to slide that ball, make sure that you are putting it the correct direction. But see how its little wings kind of get in the way? It would really help if I could find my other pliers. But we're just going to slowly move them together. And there you go. So you guys can see that the hook is kind of out of the way of the wings. It's not in between there. Or sorry, not the hook, the little ball stud. So that when you are wearing them, they're still kind of going to dangle a little bit. And we're going to do the same thing for this one. Just slide it through that little hole. And make sure you're putting your little stud piece facing correctly. And then we're just going to close it up. So doesn't the black hardware look so good with those earrings? It just kind of blends in, which is what I was wanting. So there are all my little earrings. I think they turned out so cute. So the next step is just putting them on your earring card and putting the backs on them. These are some finished pictures. I think they turned out really, really cute. Y'all let me know what color that you like best. And if you grab some of my earring cutters and make your own, please post in the groups. I love to see what you guys come up with and what sorts of items inspire y'all. And I hope y'all liked this tutorial. I know it's something different. I haven't ever done earrings before, but you will probably be seeing a lot more earring tutorials coming up. I have a lot planned, as well as earring cutters and polymer clay tools that you can use. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If y'all enjoyed this tutorial or learned something new, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch the next video coming up that was picked just for you. As always, if you're looking for more tips, tricks, or tutorials, be sure to check out my groups on Facebook that are linked in the description. Thanks for watching.